So this afternoon, sorry, I should say, we're going to be looking at PowerPoint as part of the Future Skills Week sessions. Just as with Excel this morning, there is a bullet point listed of everything which I'm going to run through with you. It's a little bit like speed dating with PowerPoint. And we're not going to be too professional about it. What we're going to do is try and cover all those bullet points, but it's a good chance for me to remember to tell you, don't worry if you're scribbling down notes on anything that we're doing. If you just want to look on, I'll signpost you to some references afterwards, so you'll be able to come back on. So don't worry about scribbling notes, as I say too much. Questions, go into the chat. As we're going, I'll deal with them all day and we'll unmute for any questions there as well. Okay, so I'll come back to that list to make sure we've covered it all. But the first thing on it is how to create a presentation. And you'll see I'm using PowerPoint at the moment just in the slides that I'm doing. However, from scratch then, just like this morning, I can from the start menu open up here the PowerPoint desktop app. I have it pinned to my start menu. If you don't, I can just search for it there using the search bar, and that'll open up for me PowerPoint from scratch then to begin my presentation. What I've done this morning, I'll show you where I'm getting my slides from, but for most people, when they're beginning with PowerPoint, they will just start from a new presentation there, but you will see PowerPoint will offer a number of different templates, and we'll look at that again as we go. Start a new presentation then, blank presentation, and off you go. You got what we really refer to there as a blank canvas, if you like. Now, for myself, once we started with that blank canvas, what you might have is a standard layout that is, for many people, a title across the top of the slide and then their content on the slide. You don't want to have to set that out for every single slide, particularly if it's quite a large presentation. So you'll see from the top menu there, inserting new slides. I can take whatever layout I want so that I can, as I say, take that slide layout and position text in set places throughout it. And you'll see some of the various options that are available there. Added in, of course, with my Ulster background. And again, I'll come back to where that came from later on. But it's just if you have that sort of element of standard layout, it can become a little bit of a time saver for you. I'm not going to use any of them this morning. What I'm going to do is start with pretty much a blank slide. So if I move on here, what I'm going to have for a blank canvas is just create really a mock-up of a PowerPoint which goes through all those bits of functionality that we looked at. So from a blank slide then, the first thing we're going to look at is how I might add some text into that slide and then format it. Okay, so from the top ribbon, as I said, I want to insert text, so I'm going to use the insert tab. And most common way of doing that, you will see here in the middle, the text box option. I can now draw the shape of that text box out and put just some example text in there. Once that's done, a little bit of a carryover from another Microsoft 365 app in Word, and all of my formatting follows exactly the same keystrokes there. So there's your bold, italics, and underline. I can change the fonts depending on what font I want, text size, and all the similar Microsoft Word functionality. Now, if I want to, I can select the entire text box and format it in one go. Let's see, changing the size of everything. Or I can select within the text box and select just one piece of that text and format it separately as well. Okay, so that's adding and some simple text formatting there as well, and that'll start you building up the content for your individual slide there. All the functionality, I would hope, and I don't want to be too presumptuous, most people are pretty comfortable with Word, anything like alignment or anything like that as well. For a personal preference here, I would take each block of text individually. So once I've put in one piece of text there, rather than try and fit it all in one text box, you'll encounter a lot of formatting difficulties. I would go back again to insert multiple text boxes. And what that does is it creates a little bit of a desktop publishing effect. As you move on to add more and more content, I can juggle around these text boxes and move them a little bit like freehand rather than try and use all the formatting within a single text box there. Okay. Some other things that you might want to add in there, real common ones, are your auto shapes. So I might take, just in the drawing panel here, an arrow to link the two toolboxes together. If I do that, double clicking on the arrow, we've just added, will get me nicely in there to the shape format, and I can change the color of anything or put some effects in there as well, make it maybe a little bit heavier so that people can see. So pretty straightforward, adding some content there, but principally, as I say, for most people, what the content that they'll be adding will be plain text there. The next thing that we're going to move on to is adding some other forms of content into our slides. The first one we're going to look at is adding backgrounds, and it comes under here, the design tab at the top. So in the design tab, you'll see that first off, Microsoft PowerPoint will suggest for me a number of templates here, and I can just preview those now by flicking through them for you. Depends on the sort of level of artwork that you like, but again, this is personal preference. I'm not an arty person at all, but I think the best thing you can do there is keep it quite simple. The reason I find some of these templates, for example, look at that one, it can then become quite difficult to read the content that is on your slides if you go too much in heavy colors, for example, like that. I find it can be difficult to read the contents of the slide, but again, personal preference. None of those templates, if none of them suit you, you can go over to the right hand side of your ribbon here and you'll see format background. And quite often what I find people doing is just taking a real soft color, like that light yellow, and just putting that as a background. So it's a little bit less stark than the plain white background, but it keeps, for me, the emphasis on your content. So suppose I have that done now. What I want to do is add some more content, and this time, rather than just text, I'm going to add some media in there. Most common media, obviously, we're adding in is just plain pictures. So back to the Insert tab, and you'll see here the Pictures drop down. If I want to add pictures to my PowerPoint, where do they come from? First option is stored in this device. That is locally. Without getting into too much depth, I hope nobody stores anything locally on their device anymore. I know it's a bit of an aside, but just maybe a helpful hint. If you store something locally in your device is corrupted, you're losing that. So for that reason, I would strongly recommend any files, folders, or in this case images, use cloud storage, most commonly OneDrive, or anyone using something like iCloud. And that's where I would get as well. I can still locate that from the device, but stock images or things you might have uploaded, or online pictures that we would go and search the internet for. I'm just going to go in now and go to my OneDrive storage as I've suggested, and I should have some handy images. Let's see. Yeah, so if we're going to admin folder, there we have the Ulster University logo. I've selected the image that I want, click on insert, and you can see now I've brought it in to my slide there. All right. Once it's in to my slide, I have a number of various options, and you'll see that again the picture format here. You can put some different effects in. Most commonly, put a border around it, just makes it a little bit tidier. And all those different things that I can do to format that picture. What I want to do now, however, is insert a second picture. And suppose I'll just take digital services specific logo. Again, these are just examples. That one's a quite nice example because it's far too big for my slide. I can resize it back down again. And now I want to move it around, and you'll see I've just laid it over the top of the Ulster University crest. It's given me a problem because I want the Ulster University crest to be on top of it. So what I want to do now is I've selected the digital services image, and up at the top there you'll see I just want to send it backwards. That is, put it behind the Ulster University one. So if you're using more than one image on any slide, you can change how they overlap between each other there. I've also decided that in the digital services logo, say I think it is still too big for me, don't need all that information, so I'm going to use my crop feature. I'm going to cut a little bit of that off, just there, and I'll move it back across. Okay, so again, I'm not worried too much about the actual appearance here. We're just maybe demonstrating some of the effects that are available. So what we've done now is we have added in a background. We put some different pieces of media in, that is just images, and other media that really you're adding in there for me most commonly might be video clips and so forth. So if you just nip over to the right hand side of our ribbon here, you'll see any video files that you might want to add, or indeed audio you can put in there as well, not just static images. All right. What I want to do now as well then, before I finish, is suppose I take this image of Ulster University, very common. I might want that to link out somewhere else, in this example, to another website. So I've selected the Ulster University image, and I want anyone that clicks on that image in my PowerPoint slide to find themselves at the Ulster University website. So you'll see there at the middle of my toolbar, I can add a link. And that link is going to go where? The Ulster University website. I'll click on OK. And what that has done now is, if I was to play the slides, just come back to where we are, and anyone was to click on that, you'll see I've embedded a link into it, which will take them to the Ulster University homepage there. It can just, for me, be a really handy feature in that sometimes people would be putting screenshots of web pages on the slides. It can really clutter it up for you. So embedding those links in there as well. And if I wanted to, if I come back up into this slide where I have my text, I can do exactly the same thing for text. So if I wanted to, I could highlight that bit of text there and link anywhere, not just to a website. There's some other files that are on my device that I've saved in my OneDrive. So if you had a link, for example, to a separate Word document, you can do exactly the same thing. So that's embedding links into slides as well then. So if we come back to where we are, and what I want to look at now is some animations. So I'll use the content that I already have here, and I'm going to click on the animations tab at the top. How do I want this content to appear in my slide? And you'll see there, I've taken the Ulster University logo, selected it, and there's just different ways, maybe to catch the viewer, make it a little bit more dynamic, which I can have that image appearing. I've done it for Ulster University. I'm now going to click the digital services one. And again, just a few examples of how that arrives into the slide there. Over to the far right of this ribbon, you'll see that I can also stipulate how I want that image to come in. For some people, they will want this to play almost like a movie file, and that'll happen automatically, and you put timings in. If you're not sure, or your timings aren't constant, you may be talking through a presentation, you can do it by mouse click, or indeed any other manner which you want. So that's your animations, how images, or indeed those text boxes that we had, how they will be animated across each individual slide there. If that's within just a slide, how do I move from slide to slide? What I mean by that is transitions, what we call transitions. So if I go back onto a previous slide that we used, what I'm going to do now is move to transitions tab at the top, and you'll see a number of different ways in which I can have myself moving from one slide to another. So again, just to give you an idea of how they go between them there. And when I advance my slide, it will move in through all of these different changing formats. So just run through them and see that are the effects that you get. And again, on the right hand side, you can choose how you want those slides to advance. Is it by yourself on a mouse click, or do you want the slide to be there a certain duration of time? Again, I'm guessing how you're going to use PowerPoint here, but if you want it by a little bit ad hoc, you want to do that manually by click. If you're moving around the room, or another common one is you've been given a set period of time to give your presentation, you might want to do that by duration, and therefore it's kind of prompt yourself to move through your slides at the proper pace. Okay, hopefully already there you're seeing the amount of content that you're putting on this slide. You put your text in, your auto shapes in, you've formatted your text and so forth. You've got a background there, you've put in images, maybe even some video clips and so forth. And what you've done also is put some transitions and animations in. So quite quickly, you've built up a pretty substantial presentation just with using that functionality. The next thing I want to look at is setting that into a show which you may present to somebody else. And the way we're going to do that is to use the tab here beside transitions and animations for slideshow. Okay, if I click at the top left, first option available there, we want to start at the beginning from the current slide. That's fine. That's if I was just starting from you guys now. But what we're going to look at here is to set up a slideshow, because it's going to work slightly differently then. Quite common PowerPoints are left on display screens, and you want them just to tick through for a long period of time. So you might have that done to loop continuously throughout the day. Is it going to be presented on by the speaker? And you can see their full screen option, which slides are available, because some you want to hide from other people as well. And I've already dealt with manually or using timings. You can see all the different options available to you as well. Perhaps the most useful one here is pen color, and that's if you're going to animate any of your slides as you go. I then want to look here at the custom slideshow. Suppose I have set all of these slides up, but I now want to stipulate what order different content appears in as I am presenting. So I'm going to go into custom slideshow now. And for any presentation, I can load all of these slides, you see the ones that I'm using, and move them across and custom my show so they're coming in different order there as well. Alright, so that's just moving through the various elements there as well. But for me, presenting the show principally dictates on, as I say, putting those animations and transitions in there so that you're having that content move. It can, and again, this is personal preference, just become a little bit gimmicky. So I would limit the amount of, images that are flying in from the left and flying in from the right and so forth. But hopefully you're getting there a good idea of how to create slides and create certainly enough content to be stimulating for whoever's looking at it, but not so much that it's confusing and taken away from your content. You can also have the option here to record your show. So that's if you're presenting it and perhaps you might want to you want to do the presentation again and again and again. You have that facility there to record your show as well. And another hint, if you like, or technique which you could use when you're actually presenting this to an audience is the use of notes there as well. So down at the bottom here, bottom right hand side of your screen now, I can add notes into any slide that I create. What that very often is a little bit of content for yourself, just a prompt to expand upon what you've put into various slides there as you go. So those notes, you can hide those from the people you're presenting to as well, so you don't always have to, as I say, there should just be a prompt just private to yourself then. All right, again, hopefully you're seeing just the amount of content that you can put into different slides here, and then now after your content is in, you can also dictate through your setting up of the show what order it's coming into each different component in the slide there. So what we've done now is produce perhaps a fairly substantial PowerPoint presentation. Suppose I want to create new slides. I have created a slide already, and I don't want to start from scratch all over again. I don't need to. So for any slide, you'll see them over in the left hand slide now, the slides panel. If I right click there, apologies, what I can do then is duplicate slides, which will give me another version of it, and then I can tailor that. Delete slides from there as well, and it just makes it a lot easier to organize my show. Similarly, if I want to reorder slides, I can just move them up and down using my slide sorter here as well. So that's how to rearrange and duplicate slides, just as I say, to save yourself a little bit of time there as well. The next thing we'll look on to, and we did a little bit of this morning as well with our Excel, was how to share and collaborate. So if we come back to my home panel now, again, suppose I have created this presentation and it's actually a group project that I'm working on, and I want others to work on it with me. Up at the top right there, you'll see the share icon, and in case you weren't in for Excel this morning, I can now share this presentation with somebody else, in this case just myself. You'll see that is actually a pencil with an ink through it. It basically means I'm only giving the viewing access. I can change that because I want my colleagues to be able to collaborate on it with me and change the presentation. So I'm going to let them edit it, and then I can send them that link. So that'll go via email. Instead of being a traditional email whereby the person will receive it, if I make changes, we're emailing a copy of this back and forward. What they'll do is that actually allows them to plug into the file as it's saved in my own OneDrive, and we're all editing the same file at the same time. You can have 2 or 3 users if you're doing group work, all editing slides together. So it might save you some time there, just if that's somebody you're doing a little bit of project work with. I'll drag that in for you. So that's how it'll arrive to your recipient, and they click and open, and they're basically seeing exactly what you are and working on it together. Similar then as well, we're in a Teams meeting at the moment. If I had a PowerPoint presentation open, you'll see I have the link there to go straight into Teams, and I can actually plug into our Teams meeting. So I'll drag that in for you, and you can see there that's how I would essentially load my PowerPoint presentation into our Teams meeting. I'll not do it now, I'll just share the desktop with you as well as doing. And another way in which I've just found more and more people using PowerPoint then is quite often, if I go up to the file and save as, or save as a copy, I can change the format of this PowerPoint presentation to any number of different formats. Now, why would I need to do that? Why I'm pointing it out to you? First of all, you obviously have people using different versions of PowerPoint, but depending on the content that you're embedding, sometimes you may need, if you're getting any error messages, you might need to change, for example, if I had a certain image format in there that wasn't compatible with someone else who wanted to view the PowerPoint too. So I'm just basically troubleshooting there in case you get any errors with PowerPoint. And what I find is a lot of people, and myself included, just because you're using PowerPoint to create a presentation, that doesn't mean you'll use it to present it. So I quite often see a PowerPoint as a PDF and just scroll through a PDF on a screen rather than the PowerPoint. But again, that's entirely personal preference, up to yourself. And the last thing, hopefully Laura will forgive me for this, although we're dealing with PowerPoint today, you may have come across the expression death by PowerPoint before, and what we're basically saying there is there's a real connotation of people standing up and reading PowerPoint slides to people. I'm sure we've all been in a presentation what's happened, and nothing will turn you off software like it. So there is also an application called Microsoft Sway. It's available to everyone university. So if I just go in now to my Office homepage, office.com, log in with your university credentials. Up at the top left, you'll see the app launcher, and there is Sway available to you. And for me, I think Microsoft have launched this essentially to combat the idea of PowerPoint as a lot of pejorative connotations of people doing boring presentations. Sway is a little bit like if you want to present something, but you still want the emphasis being on you as a presenter rather than PowerPoint slides. I could start a new blank Sway here, but the reason I'm showing it during this session is that Sway integrates with PowerPoint. So if I click here to start on a document, I can take any PowerPoint presentation which I have, and I can import it straight into Sway again there. So you'll see that's creating an online presentation for me, taking all of my content, which was just 1 second ago was in PowerPoint, and I've now taken it and put it into Sway. And you'll see now I can move through a Sway presentation in the same way as I could move through a PowerPoint one. It just makes it a little bit more fluid. That one's only a short presentation, but it's something that you might want to experiment with if you're giving presentations in certain project areas and so forth. What I want to do now is jump back to the PowerPoint I started with, which we made a bit of a mess of, just adding our various contents in there. So if you have a quick scan through that now, hopefully you can do everything that is on those bullet points there. This is where PowerPoint kind of becomes specific to the user as to with the content that you're adding. So hopefully you're able to do it, but the amount of time and content that you're putting on the slides is obviously very personalized. But I think that just that bullet pointed list there's absolutely loads to create what would be a fairly professional looking PowerPoint presentation. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is say there down the bottom, you will see as it says exemplars. So If you look at that slide, which I took literally from a Google presentation, you can see how did they present that slide, okay? And that's just a text box with fonts changed. The Google homepage was a screenshot and then the cropped image, exactly as we did, as we have done this morning. There's something that might look a little bit like quite a professional PowerPoint slide that might have taken an awful lot of time to create from scratch. If you look at it, the slide layout is just in two halves, so that created this effect. This part of text, it's just a text box with fonts changed. And here, 4 images. And on top of the images, they have put in some text boxes and just made the background transparent or no background, so that you're seeing through the background into the image that they want. So if you think about the slide that way, again, it's actually really straightforward. And there's another slide, which may look like someone's a bit of a PowerPoint professional and how they've blended these images and so forth. But again, if I just put that red text and overlay, you can see the title is just a text box and a font. They've inserted some images down the left. That black and white image is just one of those image effects that I showed you. There's an arrow, which is an auto shape, and then they've brought these images forward there, and a text box over the top of that. So if you break down those slides, I think you get to the stage where you can see that creating something that looks pretty professional, like any of those slides, if you were presenting as part of your project, actually fairly straightforward, I feel anyway, and how you create a professional looking presentation. Then I'm going to go back for a moment just so to get a chance to go back through what we did present this morning, and just some things that I've taken as we go along with producing good PowerPoints, because for me, I try not to emphasize the technical side of creating a PowerPoint presentation, because if you see that, I think that's pretty straightforward. How you remember, it's a presentation you're doing, not just PowerPoint skills. So I'll maybe jot some of these into the chat, or if you want to do it as we go. But for me, what does creating a good PowerPoint depend on? Golden rules, if you like, things that I would concentrate on. First of all, I cannot emphasize enough the idea of preparation. And it might seem really strange for someone whose job is digital skills. I would go low tech. I don't think you can substitute the idea of an A4 sheet and a pencil and drafting, or as I say, storyboarding your PowerPoint presentation. If you want to start electronically from the PowerPoint package, I find you'll lose a lot of time playing around and stuff. Create it in paper first of all, do your storyboarding, and then move electronic. And essentially then you're just recreating, using PowerPoint to recreate a presentation you've already done. The next thing I would say there is consistency. There is nothing worse than moving from slide to slide and having an entirely different color scheme, using different fonts and different slides and so forth. I mentioned earlier on, for example, the Ulster University slides that I'm using at the moment. I'm not sure if everyone has access to this, it's just staff. But if I paste in now from the Ulster University site, you'll see that Marketing Columns in the university, they actually have templates here for PowerPoints. And that's how much they value consistency, and that everyone throughout the university has a PowerPoint slide deck that they can go to, which will follow that consistency and commonality through it. So consistency for me in terms of your color scheme, the theme that you're using, the fonts, and even the layout of the slides is very important as well. And the next one I would say, in terms of visually how people are looking at your slides, then you want them to stand out, so use them effectively. Humans process images an awful lot quicker than text. Sometimes I would even say, because people have been that many PowerPoint presentations, they don't want to read the text that you have on it. So if you are using images, make sure, as I say, you use them effectively. Don't just plaster images on any more than you just plaster text on. Rough rule of thumb, I wouldn't have any more than 2-3 images on a PowerPoint slide, okay? Unless they're obviously grouped together in some sort of gallery. I've heard the term, hopefully it's not too crude, slide vomit from PowerPoint presentations, and I'm sure you can visualize exactly what I mean. And if someone has just plastered so much content onto the slide, it renders it absolutely meaningless. So please don't fall for that either. And mentioned there the number of text, the amount of images in this PowerPoint slide, sorry. The same applies with text. You should never be reading a PowerPoint off to people. Your text should just be a few bullet points. Use the notes facility there for your own notes if you feel you're going to need to read them out again. I've heard it mentioned that thanks to Twitter, nobody really wants to read anything longer than 144 characters anymore anyway. So if you do put all this fabulous information in a PowerPoint slide, most of it is probably wasted in that idea of death by PowerPoint. And the last thing is if you are going to be presenting a project, part of the course or anything, absolutely rehearse your PowerPoint. It'll do wonders for the timing of transitions and animations and setting up the show. If you're using any of those that functionality I went through with you, then you're really going to have to present it to make sure they work. The other thing it does is it picks out errors for you as well, particularly if you can get a third party, someone else to present to or to look over your PowerPoint slides. They'll pick off those errors for you because you ensure someone in the audience will. So that's just some golden rules I would have for PowerPoint presentations. And lastly, while you're looking over that list to see whether or not we've covered everything there, I'm just going to put a couple of links into the meeting for you now. And that is the links for both Microsoft and for LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn Learning, if you don't use it, is available to all staff and students via the portal. And I'll just put those in for you now. Links. Microsoft support online here. So you can see they've divided PowerPoint up into various different aspects. There is also in there as well a little quick guide. So some of that is video training, but you'll see in there as well PowerPoint indeed for all of your there's some video training as well divided into all those various aspects. And for LinkedIn Learning, there's absolutely tons of LinkedIn Learning courses there, and there's one PowerPoint Essential Training. Again, I don't know anyone who's actually going through 2 or 3 hours of PowerPoint, but on the left hand side you can use some of the functionality, jump through, maybe just look at 1 or 2 chapters if you want to refresh your memory or go through any of those. So Laura, is there anything in the chat there, any questions you might want us to address or anything you want to back over?
Yeah, we had a couple there, just Chris. So a wee while ago, we were asked, it was a couple of people were asking the same thing about, does Microsoft have a function to remove the white background out of a picture? Okay, now one of our other students or participants has come in and said that you can from the picture format tab. So just wondering, maybe could you demonstrate that maybe for other people on the call who maybe don't know how to do that?
Any picture that you want to do here, I can take that picture and you can see up the top there all the different picture formats that exist and how I process that picture. I mean, I can rotate it, I can perform any of the different effects within PowerPoint here, but I'm guessing there's the layout, picture effects, and so forth. Okay, most of those, if you want to go into any real detail in how to edit a picture before you use it in your PowerPoint, that is that the one that you've got, be it online or supplied, isn't suitable. I'll be honest with you, I would generally, rather than use all of these effects here, I tend to do that in a separate graphical package, to be brutally honest with you. And again, we spoke about Visme this morning. You'll get tons and tons of free picture editing software online. Let me just Google it. So if you find any of all of those image formatting tools, if you're still not getting anything, if you still don't have the image that you want, put it into anything, any picture editor whatsoever. I know if you happen to be lucky enough to be a Mac user, images tend to be easier to edit as a Mac user than on a PC, but you'll get tons of online tools as well if you can't get that image exactly the way you want. And I mean, it's a bit out of date now, but obviously you have Photoshop there as well. I suppose it depends on the level of detail you want in your picture and your PowerPoint slide, is how much time you want to spend on.
Okay, that's great. And then just when it comes to converting your PowerPoint into like a PDF file, I've just been asked there, if you have a video link in your PowerPoint, does it transfer across into your PDF?
Yeah.
Or would you have to then do a bit of separate work to link that back up again?
Used to be the PDFs were pretty static file format. So all of the links that I brought across into PDFs now, and they'll still work in PDF and a PDF editor there as well. The only thing you need to stay attuned to is if you had, for example, a video file, is that video file compatible with every one device that you're sending it out to? And for that reason, I know that some people, rather than link to that file, they'll embed the link. So they'll maybe follow the link to the video file on your OneDrive. The other thing is if you embed video files in PowerPoints, you can make it a much larger file size. Depending on, I know anyone who's in Georgetown, for example, it can be a bit touch and go as to whether or not you're getting enough bandwidth to play that video if it's an online video or something. So maybe it goes back to what I was saying about rehearsing. If you're presenting for a class or anything, run through it in the room that you're actually going to use. I know that's not what some people want to hear in terms of their time. Find the easiest way of embedding that video, both in terms of is it going to be compatible for other people's devices or is it going to play for you when you're actually presenting. As I say, you might want to link out to a video rather than embed it in a PowerPoint.
That's great. I know definitely being in Jordan's town can be hit and miss with getting things to work. So that's great. And then another question here, just how do you create a master slide?
Okay, so I probably should have covered that, my bad. So in my presentation here, I've just went to the view tab and you can see there's slide master. And you can read it yourself. What that actually does, as it says, I should have covered that at the start. If you're presenting, about to create a presentation, rather than have to put things like backgrounds or position text right the way through maybe 100 different slides, whatever it's going to be, you can use a slide master and dictate that from the start. And anything that you do in the slide master is applicable to all the slides thereafter. I'm probably the worst person to ask about that because I tend to use that duplicate slide. I have no idea why. But slide master, I know for people who are doing it quite often, can be a time saver. Yeah. So you'll see there in the view tab the slide master, and as I say, just click on it. It just dictates that slide format throughout there. So I can put something like that. And I know, I forget the name of the library referencing, the Harvard referencing. Some people use this. You'll see the different levels of text depending on what paragraphs are for presentation as well. But if that's something rather than you have to do it per individual slide, say you can use the slide master there from the view tab.
Okay, that's great. And then there's another question here now. This is maybe more directed towards us at employability, but just about techniques that we would say are especially important for PowerPoints at interview. So that's probably not something that Chris would be able to answer, but some of those key tips that Chris was giving us there about, preparation and practice and making sure that you have that, you avoid that death by PowerPoint, but you have a good balance of images and text and that you're not reading off your PowerPoint slides as well. All of those sorts of things are really key for interviews as well as any other presentations that you might be given. But Catherine, if you just want to look further up the chat box, you'll see that my colleague Shauna has put in a link for an Improve Your Presentation Skills. It's a wee webinar that we run with Employability and Careers. And we really focus there about how you can prepare, plan your presentation and practice it and hopefully overcome any sort of presentation nerves and things that you might have. So if you do have to do a presentation for your course or for an interview or whatever it might be, you could take part in that Improve Your Presentation Skills just to get a wee bit more confidence when using it in those sorts of situations. Okay. Brilliant.
Hi Laura, on LinkedIn
Yeah.
Learn on that too. So I know I just linked the one course there, but if I go into LinkedIn Learn there, the homepage, you can just use that toolbar as if it was a Google search, and you have loads of interview techniques and so forth in there for that.
Oh, LinkedIn Learning, yeah, is a really brilliant tool as well. So for all of our students and even staff members that might be on the call, it is a really good tool for you to go in and have access to. So feel free to go in and just, as you say, use that search bar and type in a few different things and see what comes up. All right. We did get just a question about getting those links sent by email. That might be a wee bit tricky because not everybody has joined us through the Handshake platform today, from having registered. So if you can, I would recommend taking the links out of the chat box before we close the session today. And let's see, if there is time, let us know how to insert or create our own template i.e. slide design. See that wee one, Chris, that the last comment?
Yep. So I've just taken the random design there and across here. What I would tend to do for that is decide that at the start. It was back what we're saying about drafting and presentation. So if I'm inserting a new slide, I can take all of my themes or my custom design at the bottom there. So you'll see, hopefully you can pick that up my share screen, okay? You should hopefully, as bad as saying about presentation, do you want just a title at the top and then complete free prose from here? Or are you going to have, for example, maybe a graph here and some a little text box to explain it and so forth? So that's how I would use when I'm inserting a new slide, the slide design. If you think it's going to be a time saver for you, I've just found that I generally insert blank slides and then use the duplicate function. But if you have that commonality, you're looking from slide to slide, that's how you can put that custom design in there and create your own templates.
Okay, that's great. Are there any other questions? Okay, so it seems all quiet there at the minute in the chat box, but feel free just to put something in there if you want to. What you'll see is I've just linked to the Careers at Ulster YouTube channel. So the recording from today's session will be uploaded in there hopefully in the next day or two. So if you did want to come back and just recap over what Chris has told us today, you can certainly do that. And we'll also try and link it to the Future Skills Week website as well. And just to bring us to the end then, bear with me, I'm going to ask Chris, can I take control and share my presentation again? If that's okay.
Please.
Okay. Brilliant. I'll show you my great PowerPoint slides here now. Let's have a look. Okay, so it's just to let you know and just remind you that obviously Future Skills Week is for the entire week. Chris has done a couple of sessions today, which have been fantastic for improving digital skills. But just to highlight to you that tomorrow as well is mainly focused around developing digital skills. So if that's something that you're interested in, you'll see here just on this slide, we do have a session on LinkedIn. We have one on social media, the law and good sense, by creating some content, okay, for social media too. And if you did want to take your Excel maybe from this morning and just bring that up to the next level, we do also have intermediate level for Microsoft Excel as well tomorrow. But apart from that, then you can also then go into the Future Skills website. Okay, apologies, I'm trying to get back to my Teams meeting. You can get back into the Future Skills website and then you'll be able to see the other great sessions that we do have for the remainder of the week too. Okay. There was a wee question there about asking questions on YouTube. I don't think we will have the facility to do that, but if you did have any questions, you can certainly forward them on to, I'm just going to type it in here, it's the Careers at Ulster email address. Okay, I'm just talk and type at the same time. But there you go. So for anybody who does have any follow-up questions, if you want to drop them in there, and we can certainly see if we can get the answers and come back to you on them.